Welcome in, race fans, to this edition of Through the Gears, presented by Front Stretch. I'm your host, Tino, and I couldn't be more excited to get back into the winning NASCAR betting racing action that we've been on a tear with for the last few weeks, and especially the month of May, as we're undefeated in picking the outright winners. Last week, we'll get right into it. The all-star racing action. Sure, maybe the product on the track could have been a little bit better, but we nailed the Ty Gibbs and Bubba Wallace top two finishers. Also cashing out there with the Ty Gibbs, winning the Open. And then we bring things over to the All-Star race. And this is where it was awesome. Joey Logano from the pole, leading almost every single lap, and we got that earlier in the week too. Then we went out back on the pond here and talked about the odds post-practice and qualifying, and we cashed out. At one point, very up until the second to last lap, we had our top three picks inside the top three, and that was awesome to see from Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Larson. We were right on the money, and I'm excited to make some more money in this episode of Through the Gears. Gotta give a special shout out to everyone who commented on the last video. Guys, thank you so much for doing that. Really means a lot to me. I love interacting and seeing what you guys have to say and who you guys think are going to win the races each and every week. So shout out to my man Kyle B8. Shout out to Donald Veal. Shout out Lori Allen 3028. Shout out to Marcus. Shout out to Tim Scott as well. He thought Larson could have a shot if he makes the race, but it was going to be tough. He picked Hamlin, Truex, Reddick for guys to look out for. I saw a lot of Christopher Bell picks. A lot of things to look out for and checking in with, and to see you guys interacting on the video there really was awesome. So keep that up. Let us know if you got any questions or insight after this show coming up here. We're going to keep staying hot here. I mean, we're looking to sweep the month of May, and we got the perfect guest joining us for this show, and that's Full Tank with Phil. Phil is one of my good buddies here within the NASCAR betting community. You can follow him at Full Tank Phil, and he has the Full Tank with Phil podcast. He's the host of that. He's also one of the hosts of the NASCAR betting preview show, and he's also just a little truck series action as well for the NASCAR betting preview show. So everyone, be sure to follow Phil at Full Tank Phil, as he's about to join us here in a couple of moments, and we're going to talk to him and break it down for the Coca-Cola 600, as it's the greatest week in motorsports. On Sunday, there's so many things to look forward to, with the F1 race to kick us off. Then you got the Indy 500, and then the Coke 600 for the greatest weekend in motorsports. And I got my stars on, as I love when all the cars pay tribute and honor America's heroes for Memorial Day weekend as well. And I did mention last week I had a special announcement, and here it is, everyone. I will be there at Charlotte Motor Speedway for the Coca-Cola 600. You can find me in the stands, and honestly, please reach out. I would love to meet any of you in person, and we could talk a little bit about NASCAR betting before the race gets underway. So I cannot wait for this week. It's going to be awesome. All the motorsports racing action, we're going to cover it for you guys right here on Through the Gears. So be sure to stay tuned in, as we got a lot of best bets, props, analysis, insight coming your way, and I am super excited for it. It's the greatest weekend in motorsports. Let's go through the gears. Joining us now as we go through the gears, previewing the Coca-Cola 600, one of crown jewels of NASCAR, we got my man Full Tank with Phil here. Phil, thanks so much for coming on the pod. And if people don't know who you are, they're going to find out, because you're one of the best in the biz. And thanks for joining us.
Tino, I appreciate the invite, man. This was great. I've been looking to get connected with you, and I was really pumped that you reached out. So I'm really pumped to be here for, like you said, a crown jewel race, and the longest one in the series. So let's get after it. This is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, Charlotte Motor Speedway too, I feel like that's just one of the homes of NASCAR and where they've come from. And it's great to always see this event and the spectacle each and every year. Talking about spectacles first, right? The All-Star race was last weekend. And, we were really talking about right before we hit record about how that race went. Did you have any bets on the line, or was there anything that you were, watching in this race that stood out to you in terms of the All-Star race itself?
Yeah, so I was scared off from All-Star races in the past. So for my podcast, I didn't put out an episode or anything like that. Just kind of said, all right, we're taking it easy this week. So I didn't place any official bets. The only thing I did do after listening to some of our friends in the community, I got a little sucked in. I threw one bet down on Larson just in case he were to like pull it off, but that was it, really, small time. And then just kind of sat back and watched. So I didn't, play it very heavily. Was really just in it to watch how it played out. And obviously I was pretty thankful that I didn't go like all in on a bunch of different, types of placement bets or anything like that, like I do in a normal week, because of what went down in that race. So I was a little excited for a little bit when Larson made his move there, but it was all for naught. So I was, kind of thankful I pulled back a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense too. I feel like that was sort of the thought process in the betting community, in the NASCAR betting community as well, just because of how, especially the other thing too that was sort of tricky with me or for me was the strategies that could come into play, the new tire that they were using, which really didn't seem to make that much of a difference when the actual race had started. I know in practice and they were talking about it, and there was different speed, like there was that showed to have a difference, but ultimately, like you said, in the main race, it didn't matter. I'll take Joey Logano leading every lap though, because I did have him. We saw him at plus 1100 earlier in the week, and then I think I hammered down a little bit more when he was 8-1 there. Also, I had Ty Gibbs, and honestly, too, another thing I just got to mention it for the people. If I had 3 picks, it was Joey, Denny, and Larson, and up until the very last lap, they were 1, 2, 3. So to be 1, 2, 3 in the All-Star race, exactly.
Yeah, can't get any better than. I mean, that's fantastic. When it's a complete stinker of a show, there's nothing better than having the guys who are stinking it up, right? I mean, there's no better feeling. And I think I was scared off by the strategy and the tire compound and everything that was going to play into the uncertainty. But if I had known that the red tire was actually just a regular tire, I think it would have been all in with Logano, like all the guys up front, not being able to get around him. That would have helped me a little bit more, because I think, gambling is benefited by that type of stuff where it's, a little bit more predictable, a little more boring.
100%. And also the fact that Joey had the tire test too at North Wilkesboro. It was him, Ty Gibbs, William Byron as well that went there. Once I heard that, and that he was starting on the pole, I was like, okay, like he's at least going to have a shot. And they were undervaluing him by a lot in that one. And so I think this is now the perfect segue here as we get into some betting strategies and Coke 600 prep. But before we really dive into that, just at the where we're at in the season, right? Because Joey Logano in the Ford car wins the All-Star race, obviously $1 million, but no points on the line. But let's not forget Brad at Darlington the week prior, right? Fords to me are hot. And if it's not all Fords, it's definitely RFK. And I would say you can throw Michael McDowell and Todd Gilliland in the mix too. They had a strong run at Darlington, and that alliance that they have with Team Penske, it almost as if they have shown more speed than them this entire season. Now, with Joey winning that All-Star race, yeah, you can't really take too much from it now heading into this part of the season. But the point that I wanted to point out was the fact that Ryan Blaney won this race last year simply out of nowhere. I mean, I know I was surprised. I believe he was like 20-1 as well to win this Coke 600 last year. And that really kickstarted his championship campaign, or at least a good summer stretch that he needed to get back inside the mix of things. So, Phil, for you, is there any drivers that right now we're not talking about or we're not thinking about? And now this may not even be the case, but I just feel like it's now going to be the second half of this regular season. Is there anyone that could sort of surprise you here and start things off with a bang at the Coke 600?
That's an interesting one. It's funny that you mentioned how Blaney kind of like stepped up out of nowhere last year, because this race being as long as it is, like, the buzzword that we'll hear all week and at the race is like the battle of attrition. It's a war. They're who can survive the longest. And that's how those types of guys end up winning those types of races. I mean, I get what you're saying about Ford. I think my mind is a little bit more on Chevy this week. And you look at somebody, if the question is somebody who could surprise, I think somebody in the Chevy camp, maybe like an Alex Bowman, who hasn't really done much this year, but at Charlotte, he's got a top 5, couple, 3 top 10s in the last 6 races. Like, he's someone, if he can kind of just survive and be there, he could fit that same billing as like not really doing much this year, but wow, he goes out and wins the 600. Oh yeah, of course, like a Hendrick car did it. Like, after the fact with 2020 vision, you're like, oh yeah, okay, that's not that surprising. So somebody like that. And then there is another guy that I could probably talk about when we get to some of the prop bets that I'm interested as well to bring up, a little bit more of a chance that I think if he were to do it would be a bit of a surprise as well. So yeah, there's, I like the thought process, and that's one of the reasons that makes this race so fun for the fans and the gamblers is, who can survive. And sometimes it is somebody out of left field like that.
Yeah, definitely. One thing too that we should talk about before we, completely dive in terms of breaking down this track and past winners is, especially when we're trying to prepare for this race, anything that may carry over from the All-Star race. And obviously I'm talking about Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Ricky punched Kyle in the face, and we were talking about it like that was the moment of the All-Star race came after. Do you think there's any thing that is Kyle Busch gonna fight back? Is Ricky gonna wreck him at Charlotte? I just want to get your thoughts on that, because I mean, hey, it's good to know coming into this one. And honestly, if they don't wreck each other, I might put a little top tenner on Ricky. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I just love the fact that Ricky stood on business and actually did something to Kyle Busch.
So yeah, I mean, it was the highlight of the race for sure. It created the best meme template we've had in a while. And yeah, that was awesome. Can we take that and apply it to this race? I hope not, as far as like taking it out on the racetrack, because I feel like they're square. Like, Kyle wrecked him, Ricky got him back in a way, if he did connect, and that should be over. Ricky has said he's not going to do anything at Charlotte. I think Kyle is just Kyle. So I would expect after things, kind of died down, that they're going to be just fine. Now, I say I hope not, because I'm invested in both those guys. And Kyle Busch was the driver. I knew we probably couldn't last too long, but Kyle Busch is one of the drivers that I wanted to talk about, that I think if he were to do something good this weekend, it would be kind of a surprise, because in his own words, like, he's been bad just like Ricky. So I think both these guys, sometimes a fight like that is the fire, under the ass that you need, and for a team, right? Like, just as a team as a whole, to get going. And I fully expect both those guys to leave it in North Wilkesboro and focus on a track that they're both very good at. So they'd be silly to try to do that when they're both in the situation that they're in this season.
No, definitely. And I think that was a huge point you brought up too. Just the fact that, like, this is like what we see in baseball sometimes. Manager gets ejected mid-game and then the team rallies. Like, I think this could either, whether you're on Team Stenhouse or KFB, like, either way, the fan base, the teams, the drivers themselves now have just a little extra fire to go out and perform when both of them really haven't been, at least to their standards. Maybe Ricky overperforms, in the equipment that he's in, but Kyle Busch, like you said, he hasn't felt like he's been driving the way he can, and that's been clear as day as well. So, and Kyle Busch, I mean, at this track last season, up front, like, that's something that like now, and I could see it with the NASCAR storylines too. I feel like this sport is just based off of so many different storylines and things that you can see that happen, where it's like, oh yeah, okay, like, for instance, where Chris Buescher could have potentially won at Darlington after finishing second in the closest finish in history. Like, just things like that, where it's like, okay, I could definitely see this happening. Kyle Busch getting back to victory lane after getting punched in the face, maybe. We'll get into that. So, all right, some tracks that can compare to Charlotte as we break this down. I got Kansas, Vegas, and Texas, all 1.5 miles, intermediate style tracks. Now, when we break those down even further, Larson won at Kansas. Larson won at Vegas. Chase Elliott won at Texas. So for you to say you're on Chevy, probably the smart idea considering Hendrick Motorsports has been that dominant on these mile-and-a-half intermediate style tracks so far this season. When I watched this race back, it was Blaney, Byron, Bell, and Reddick that were some of the fastest cars. We mentioned Kyle Busch as well. That would probably be the top five. Denny didn't really have a shot because Chase Elliott took him out in this one last year. Is there anything that you look at, Phil, in terms of preparing for the Coke 600 this year that, whether it's track style, attrition, like you mentioned, or, hey, now we have 400 laps, 600 miles, and now an extra stage added on as well?
Yeah, I love mile and a halves because I feel like that's a great, first of all, the package has been phenomenal from a racing standpoint, but from a gambling standpoint, it's the type of track that we can get a lot of data from and feel comfortable heading in, especially this part of the season. So for me, we only come here once a year now because of the Roval. So I look at the last 6 races at Charlotte. There was a couple in there for the COVID year. So 6 races at Charlotte specifically, and I like to know how they're doing at that track. But then you mentioned the 3 from this year, right? So I'm focused on the 3 mile and a half we've been to, who finished where, and I also like to look at like green flag speed because sometimes, and driver average, driver rating, sometimes they'll tell a different story than just the finish. So who's just fast in general, and then just for a little feather in the cap or a little bit more confidence, I do like to go back when we have the ability. I go back to the beginning of 2023. So that's 9 mile and a half. It's the full boat last year of the mile and a half slate of those tracks that you mentioned. And then it's also the 3 from this year. So it gives you a little bit more, I definitely tend to side more with like Charlotte and this season. But, if we can find anything, if there's a guy who's just like dismal on mile and a halves in the last year plus, I want to know about it. So those are the ways that I'm kind of breaking this one down. And it makes you feel good, as a gambler, to have that amount of things to pull from, because we don't always get that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, like you mentioned, in terms of seeing the racing product on these mile and a halves and intermediate style tracks, is it's been awesome. Like that's, to me, I think this is like one of the best NASCAR seasons I've ever watched. And to now see that we have all these different storylines, we've had great racing. Dover was an okay battle between Denny and Larson. Then we get Kansas, and then we get Darlington. All-Star race, okay, we'll throw it out, but we still had some good fighting action inside of it. And like now we go to the Coke 600, and I'm feeling good. Like, hey, even Texas, which some people say, they don't like that track, deservedly so. Okay, fine, everyone has their opinion, but it was still a good race at the end of the day. Or maybe it was because of all the overtime, overtimes that they had and restarts. But Kansas, probably one of the best races I've seen. And to now get back to Charlotte, like you mentioned, that's something that excites me. And another thing too is, when we look at this odds and see who's at the top of the board, it's the same 2 drivers that we've been talking about so far all season long. Kyle Larson leads them off at plus 450, Denny Hamlin at plus 600. And I'm going to stop there real quick because Kyle Larson to me at plus 450, obviously it's going to make sense. I mean, that's pretty much the number he's been at, except for last week at the All-Star race. Crazy value for him because he was flying in the same day. But that's what he's doing at Charlotte. That's what he's doing for the Coke 600. So, I mean, everyone knows, all these sports books know that he's doing the double, right? That's what we're going to be talking about. Kyle Larson doing the double, and for him at plus 450, I don't understand. I want to bet on him because I think he can win this race and honestly the Indy 500 too. But at plus 450, Phil, I wouldn't you want a little more juice considering he's racing in 500 miles just a couple hours before?
100%. I mean, that's the exact same mentality that I had when I saw the odds. I was like, this is crazy. Like, I really don't understand it. And just looking at the top of the board too, like we've got Denny up there as well. Like, he's been decent, but he's also had some bad finishes at Charlotte, specifically. So to see those, 2 guys, I mean, with Larson, I was really disappointed because I wanted to bet him as well. And it looks like, Bet Rivers, I think, has him at 6-1, which is a little bit better. But 450 most of the time, you kind of have to be like, dude, this guy, he's going to be drained and rushed and just like out of sorts. if there's anyone that can do it, it's him for sure. Cause you can throw him in anything. He's going to do it. But it still makes me a little apprehensive to just kind of throw Kyle Larson down for a plus 450 number to win the race. So yeah, I was a little disappointed. I thought we might get a little longer odds for him for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so now I think maybe our best bet would be to try to parlay that with him actually winning the Indy 500. I don't have the calculator in front of me, but I'm sure those odds would be insane. And obviously, if that actually did happen, it would be even crazier. But I honestly do think he is capable of doing it. Like you mentioned, he can roll out of bed and win a race. We saw that from him at the All-Star race. So obviously it wasn't for points, but it was still for $1 million. The guy goes from the back of the field to the top three. But okay, so now after moving away from the favorites there, who we may, bet on, whether it's later in the week or seeing if the value gets, because I don't think that number is going to go down for either Hamlin or Larson unless they end up winning the poll. Tyler Reddick, Ryan Blaney, William Byron are your next three, ranging from plus 800 to plus 1,000 on DraftKings specifically. Obviously, you guys can shop around. Be sure to do so for better value if it's out there. Chase Elliott, Truex, Brad are the next few in that bunch. Is there any one of those drivers that stand out to you? I'll say a name. And it's going to be Tyler Reddick because I feel like him specifically. Yep, you like that because seeing what he was able to do at Texas and then watching the Coke 600 back last year, he was one of the fastest cars in the field. What do you think about Reddick in this one?
I'm with you. I'm not going to tell anyone to steer away from Reddick. I think he is someone to absolutely have your eyes on. 3 races this year. He's got 2 top 5s. There's only a few guys that can say that. It's him, Larson, and Elliott on these 1.5 miles. And he, is someone that's able to do it from, he 18th was a starting position at Vegas, and he was able to, jump up and finish second behind Larson. Like he's not going to scare me on practice. I have faith in Reddick pretty much on a week in and week out basis now when we go to these intermediates. Like, and it's funny, like he's sort of being moved up in my mind as okay, like you're going down the board like you just did. Where's the right tipping point to okay, that's too short. That's too short. Okay. That's really good. Reddick's been that guy for me. So it's only, a matter of time for him to really have a breakout. And I feel like 2024 is where he's going to have a big breakout. So to your point about Blaney last year starting a championship run here, like this is a driver that could absolutely do it because a lot of these tracks match up well for his skill set. So it's kind of like, when's the ice going to break?
Yeah. And I like seeing that out of Tyler Reddick. Like that, we know he's one of the most capable drivers in terms of his versatility of being able to, rip the fence or road courses or dirt tracks, like whatever the case may be, and won at a super speedway at Talladega. I think this, to your point, is a pivotal season for Tyler Reddick in terms of his, I guess, just driver ranking, at least in my mind. Like I think he's becoming elite. And I always feel like I think most people felt he was capable of that, but I feel like we're seeing it now in real time where he's not just a driver that can, race hard when you go to Vegas or Kansas and run the high line or Homestead and things like that. Like now we're talking about him to win the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte. And I feel like that wasn't really the mindset behind Tyler Reddick all the time. And he's getting better at short tracks as well. Like ran decent at Dover, if I remember. Martinsville got a top 10. He's one of the hottest drivers in the field right now. And I think even before his win at Talladega, he was as well. Like it was HMS, JGR, and Tyler Reddick. And now we're seeing RFK get into the mix a little bit as well. Speaking of which, Chris Buescher, 13-1. He's probably one of the most hottest drivers right now, just in terms of RFK and the forward speed that they've been showing. And lastly, in terms of drivers for more value, Joey Logano plus 1,800. Kyle Busch plus 1,800 as well. And then you alluded to him earlier, Alex Bowman at plus 3,000. That if I'm looking for more value, it would be those 3 towards the bottom of the list here for the odds wise. I just feel like each one of them could potentially go out and win this race. And especially, I mean, if we're talking about Kyle Busch, that would be a number that, but at the same time, so here's my question to you. Kyle Busch this season, to me, has been so intriguing in terms of wanting to bet on him. Like, he had a strong run at Kansas, right? At least in the top 3, running top 5. And I was like, okay, he's going to go out and win Darlington. Like, I was convinced he was like an underdog play. I got him at like plus 1,800 or 12 to 1, 14. He was going down. Then he qualifies like, back of the pack. And then the number just goes worse and worse and worse. And he just lays a stinker. Is Kyle Busch someone that, like, I feel like he's hit or miss for me this year? What are your thoughts on him and how he's been from a betting perspective?
Yeah, no, he's been, for the most part, a guy who lets you down. And I think when you're looking to play him, I need to temper my expectations for Kyle. And so I do get excited when I see like 18 to 1, like you mentioned, for him to win this race. So that's the kind of thing. That's where like my general progression is like, wow, that's exciting. But then I'm like, okay, it is Kyle. This year, something's going on. So how else can I make money? And that's where, I'm kind of landing to a top 10 and a head-to-head against somebody that you just mentioned, which is Joey Logano. I like Kyle in his specific spots right now until that team can, and they have buttoned some things up too. Like, they started the year as a team, like not performing very well on pit road and making mistakes, but they've started to clean some of that stuff up recently with some changes they made. So until they can actually prove it, like, I'm fine watching him win without having that ticket, but also having him in another type of market. And then I'll have the ability to be like, okay, I feel good about this next bet on him to win, for longer odds. Cause if he goes out and wins Charlotte, like, it's not like he's going to be 6 to 1 again, like he used to be, he's still going to be double digit odds, track to track. So if he were to go on a tear, I think everybody could make money after he crosses over there.
Yeah. I think that's the smart way of doing things too, because it's like we want to, and the main thing is him proving it to us, because it's not, because we know the equipment is so. We know his teammate in Austin Dillon is not good.
I hate it, dude. I hate it. I know we're on the same page there. It sucks.
Yeah. Like I might be looking at him for a top 10 in this one too. I don't know, but it's like all those things considered, it's still Kyle Busch, but we still need to be smart and have him prove it to us. And when the win comes, like you mentioned, like, he won't go immediately back to the favorites in terms of passing drivers like the Larson, Hamlins, even Truex, or like he will still be where he should be, I hope, in terms of his value moving forward when he does win. But now, as we are talking about winning and winners, let's go into the outright winners portion of the show. And I mean, Phil, just who's your favorite guy? Who's your favorite ticket? What are you thinking this weekend that can go out and make us the most money for the Coke 600?
So you got to bear with me on this one, because this season I've had the best season that I've had since I started doing the podcast. And I attribute to that to a certain way I've been playing the outright market. And it's kind of, you could consider it like kind of cheating or whatever. But what I like to do is zero in on my manufacturer pick. Okay. So this week I'm on Chevy, plus 160, and I'll allocate that in a way that, I'm going to play them. And if they hit, I'm going to make, enough money to cover anybody else that I throw money on. So I played my manufacturer pick, and then I pick a guy or two for some insurance. So give you the quick rundown of why Chevy. First of all, they are the most populated car in the field, 14 drivers compared to 13 and 9. So like I said, battle of attrition, who can survive? I'll take the team with the most. But from top to bottom, I think Chevy has the most drivers that could actually fall them, into victory lane. We're not talking about just the 4 Hendrick drivers. Ross Chastain could step up. We've got randoms throughout that group. Kyle Busch is one of those where if I'm looking at 6, I have 6 metrics written down in front of me. Okay. Kyle Busch is the leader in average finish at Charlotte. Chase Elliott's a leader in driver rating. Chase Elliott, best driver or average finish in mile and a half this season since 2023 started. Byron has the best average finish. Larson has the best green flag speed. So it's an eclectic group, and that's why it's not like one guy. So I like having that. And you get Larson, who's short anyway. So let's put them aside, right? So Chevy's my pick. And somebody that we kind of arrived to on my podcast, I had Speedway Steve too, those guys on the pod this week, and we're trying to say like who's someone that we can cover, right? Reddick was a name that came up, and I'm going to be on Reddick, but also Martin Truex Jr. came up because he's long this week, dude, really long, and he's been snake bit, but he's been snake bit from like 7-1, 650, sometimes 8-1. What's he now? He's like 12-1, 11-1. That's pretty wild. So you can throw a fraction of a unit on him and still have some money to play with on another guy like Reddick. So it's like, who can beat me? And Martin Truex Jr., I mean, he's a consistent guy on these style tracks. He's had success at Charlotte. I made the joke, to those guys, like I did not have him when he led like a million laps in the Coke 600 years ago. So I'm not going to make that mistake again because when he shows up and completely kills everyone. So Truex is someone that I think could be an insurance play for the Chevy manufacturer pick. So hopefully that makes sense the way I'm kind of breaking that down.
It actually did. Like that's actually awesome. Like that's a sick method for real. Like I'm really happy that I like learned that strategy, right? And I hope everyone else tuning in did as well, because that to me is a really smart way to do things. Because I was thinking about it like as you're describing things, and it's like, okay, the guys that can beat you are now the guys you're also going to put some money on, like whether it's a Reddick, a Truex. Sticking with Truex for a second here too. I think he's been hot, and I think he's been due. Obviously, it's going all the way back to Richmond, the race he dominated and should have won. I had a ticket on there, so that was brutal. Yeah. But aside from that one, the month of May has been good for him. He top 3 at Dover, probably could have had a shot if it wasn't Denny and Larson going at it, and I believe he did get damaged. Pit crew also struggled. But Kansas was another one that stood out to me. He was going to win that race had it stayed green, and that one would have been a perfect way for him to get back into victory lane. He still almost did win it, finishing 4th by 0.10 thousandths of a second or whatever it was. And then Darlington too, I think he was like building up a lot of momentum, had a top 5 car at Darlington. At least he was in the top 5 when he then got damaged from William Byron and Ryan Blaney there, which sent him, out of the race and out of contention to win. So to me here, I definitely agree. Like you, I wrote that down too when he led like 392 laps, only didn't lead 8 laps. To me, I think this could be an MTJ day. And I think the fact that it's a longer race actually plays in that team's favor, because I feel like I do agree what you're saying in terms of when he's on, like he's locked in, he dominates. And we saw that at like New Hampshire last year. He had the fastest car whenever MTJ has the fastest car. But lately he hasn't, honestly. I feel like it's been like Reddick and Hamlin, even we'll see Bell get the pole. But my thought process here with MTJ is the fact that I think with it's a longer race, they have more time to fix things and adjust the car the way he maybe needs it, or operate on some strategy that could have him up front in the end. And one question I did want to ask you, in terms of the guys that can beat you, you mentioned the Toyotas. You're obviously on Chevy and building the card around that. Would a Ford driver like Chris Buescher cross your mind in terms of someone that could potentially sneak out a win here, or you would throw some units on in terms of he can beat you in this process you have?
So Buescher, he's an interesting one, and both RFK drivers, I kind of lump them together here because I think if I was taking one of the two on mile and a halfs, Brad would probably be the one I would go with. So like Buescher, I'd be more inclined to take him in like a prop, like a top 10 type of deal. But then we have just like, he's a momentum guy, and he had that momentum. I don't know if the All-Star race kind of like cooled him off a little bit or not. It will be tough to see, but Buescher's not somebody like, when I'm looking at the information that I was mentioning earlier, he's not someone that's like jumping off the page to me. Somebody that's like, hey, look at me. Like I have something here that's saying I have the ability to run really well here. I mean, he is 7th in green flag speed so far this year on mile and a half. That's pretty much all I'm seeing on Buescher, which is fine, right? Like that shows like he's generally fast, but I need more than that to get behind him. If I was going with a Ford, I'd probably have to go pretty chalky, like a Blaney situation. So with the Ford guys, I think I'd prefer Brad over Buescher just within their camp. So hopefully,
Okay.
I know. How do you feel about that? I didn't want to damper anything that you had going on with Busher.
Well, honestly, no, I'm glad you said that because Busher kind of just has been stuck in my mind ever since he got hot at that Kansas race, and it seems like he's been looking for revenge too. So to me, that's something that is still stirring. But I feel like that insight was good because it's true. Like Brad has just been better than Busher. Now, those two RFK cars I feel like are always probably identical in terms of speed at most tracks they go to. Like if Brad's has race winning speed, so does Busher. If Brad's outside the top 10, Busher's 11th, like same sort of deal. But you put it in good perspective because at Texas it was Brad. Vegas, I feel like it was Brad also. Kansas, then it was Busher. But Brad, if it stays green, like we talked about, it would be Brad and Truex there at the end. So no, I definitely agree with that, and I think that's good to know. Now, real quick too, while we're stuck on the Fords, one guys that popped into my mind was Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney. Any thoughts on them in this one? Because I like the Joey Logano plus 1800, but I don't want to get too excited just because he won the All-Star race and things like that. Like I feel like Penske's still a step behind the rest.
Yeah, 100%. Again, if it was like between those two guys, I'm taking Blaney in that just because Logano, he hasn't been very good here recently at Charlotte specifically. 21st last year, 20th, 17th. He had a 6th, but then a 13th. So like it's not like this is his playground. Compared to the guy who won here last year on a Monday race, kind of a wonky day, but still, Blaney was able to get it done. I'm actually looking the other way with Logano. I'm not taking him. I think it's great that he won the All-Star race, but I'm not interested in taking him. Definitely. Actually, I'll take that back. I'm fading him in a head-to-head matchup here coming up, but for an outright, like you said, like 18-1, like if somebody was like, hey, there's a reason. If you were trying to tell me I'm in on Logano for a sprinkle, I don't think I would reject that just because of how long the number is. Because 18-1 for Joey Logano is crazy. But that's just the season that it's been. So more specifically,
we can't forget that he's been struggling this year.
Yeah, it's been a rough year, and I'm someone who has a win total on him. So I was wishing that the All-Star race counted. I got like over 1.5 wins for him, so I'm not loving that at all right now. And I thought that was going to be an absolute layup. So pretty down on our boy Logano.
Hey, I can't blame you. It's an even year. I can't blame you because I know it's an even year, and Joey Logano on even years. Yeah, right. Yeah. So
you know the trends.
Yeah, I was looking at that one at the beginning of the season, and I was like, Joey has like 15 wins on even years and only 5 on odd years. But hey, maybe things will turn around. But I did hear you allude to a good prop bet or good head-to-head you were talking about there. Now let's get into that and see where we can sort of bring home some money in the prop market.
I really love Kyle Busch head-to-head versus Joey Logano this week for a number of different reasons. Kyle Busch, we'll start with him. 6 races at Charlotte. He's got 4 top 5s. That's tied for the most in NASCAR with Chase Elliott. And that's including since he's been at RCR, right? So like, I think we kind of have this cloud over us. Like he hasn't been who he is since he's went to RCR. Not necessarily the case. Pretty surprising. And in that time span, he's first in average finish, 7.8 in all of NASCAR, second in driver rating. But this is what surprised me, right? Because you could say, all right, at Charlotte, there's still some JGR in that mix, right? When you're looking at that time span. But this season, his 3 mile-and-a-halves, his average finish is actually 9th in NASCAR, 14.3. He's got back-to-back top 10s, 10th in green flag speed. If you go all the way back to 2023, he's 6th in green flag speed. So I was expecting to see Kyle way down that list, like for finishes and driver rating and speed in general. But when he was in the top 10 and he's kind of like fighting around and finished top 10 2 out of the 3 times, that had my attention. Like, okay, I don't need him to win the race. I would be interested in top 10 for Kyle, but in this case, I just need him to beat one guy. Well, who's he going up against? Mm-hmm. Well, it's Joey Logano, who is not running all that well. Like I mentioned his history at Charlotte recently, 2 top 10s in the last 6 starts, and they haven't been good recently. 0 for 3 in that sense. And then 2024, he's got 1 top 10, 2 top 15, 16th in green flag speed. Like, he's the guy who's further down the list, where I was expecting Kyle to be that dude. So immediately I was like, all right, I was thinking about Kyle for a top 10, but if I could just get him to beat one driver on a track that he has been consistently good back-to-back year, or last year for RCR as well. I'm all in on that head-to-head. So that's one of the head-to-heads that I'm really very interested in, because it's a tough market this week so far, on a Wednesday. We don't have everything available to us. So that was one that stood out, because I think we could take advantage of a little bit of a hangover for Joey. And, the books had him even. I don't see that as an even matchup.
I like that breakdown too, because I feel like that's the part, like in terms of Kyle Busch and his speed here, that's not something that I looked up the stat, like, oh, Kyle Busch, Coke 600 stats, and boom, there he was, like you're saying, right at the top. And it's like to have the vision of him struggling like he has been, at times with RCR, I was surprised at that as well. So that is definitely something that's good to know, especially coming into a weekend where, okay, yeah, we can't trust him as much as we used to, but it's still Kyle Busch. I've never seen Kyle Busch get punched in the face before, but I have to imagine that it's gonna light a fire, and he's gonna run strong and definitely have a little bit of advantage over Logano, like you mentioned. I want to talk to you about the top 10 market right now, because I just pulled this up here on DraftKings specifically, and there's 3 guys that stood out to me. One is Alex Bowen, plus 110 for a top 10. 2 is going to be, we'll go with Bubba Wallace, plus 100 for a top 10. I think that's decent value as well for him. I feel like he finished 4th in this race last year. He's shown speed at Texas, Vegas, so, similar tracks. But then Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is plus 500 for a top 10 finish. And let me tell you this. He finished 7th in this race last year, and the guy who finished ahead of him was Kyle Busch in 6th. So both Ricky and Kyle, who are the storylines heading into this weekend, had speed at this track last year and present value with us in the prop market. Out of those 3 drivers, which one really catches your eye the most?
Well, yeah, I could definitely be persuaded for those guys. Bubba, I would probably need a little bit more, because I feel like the longer race doesn't suit him as well. But clearly he did well last year. He was able to maybe mature a little bit. His history at Charlotte isn't as good as the other guys. But yeah, let's talk about Ricky, dude, because that was somebody I have written down. His top 10 number is crazy. It was plus 600 last night. So clearly some people are starting to catch on, and it's simply, just track history here. That's what we're going off of. 2 top 5s, 4 top 10s in 6 races. That's nuts for someone who's 5-1, like you said, at this point on DraftKings. Wild. And he's also like plus 350 on other books. So you shop that number around and you get the best number you can for someone who has clearly had the ability to do it. So that's why I was saying when we started the show, I'm hoping that fight doesn't come over to Charlotte in a negative fashion, because I think there's money to be made on both these guys, kind of rebounding and using that, bottling up and doing it well. Ricky, yeah, I think kind of the longer race helps him, because he's somebody that I could feel like he's just kind of there. He's like a gnat, you know what I mean? He gets into trouble, you think he's done, but then there he is again. He's the lucky dog. And
he's gritty.
A million cautions. Yeah, and he's gritty. And there he is in the end, where everybody's wrecking each other late. Here comes Ricky Stenhouse to sneak a 7th place finish. He's done it back-to-back years. So I would never talk anyone off that ledge, as long as you're betting it, appropriately. That's a long shot, right? To happen. Let's have some fun with that long number for a top 10 even.
Yeah, no, yeah. Maybe we could get top 5 too, but no, definitely like it there. I think that too. I think that's great value. That plus 500 too. Now I'm like looking at it again. I think that's going to be huge. Don't get it confused with Austin Dillon at plus 600, because I'm staying away from that. Although he finished 9th in this race last year.
Dude, I was hoping that you were going to bring that up when I was hopping on. I was looking through that. I was like, where did Dylan finish last year? Like, oh, yes, here we go. This is going to be a Dylan show. I could feel it.
He's burned us. Oh,
yeah. He's on suspension for me still.
Yeah, good. Honestly, I might be a mutual. Once you get back on him, let me know, because then I think I'm back too. Because at this rate, I can't I can't even hear his name anymore. But in terms of any more props as we wind it down here, close out the show, is there anything else you got for us in terms of top threes, top fives, head to heads, anything else that you like in this one?
I wasn't planning on bringing it up, but you mentioned a couple of these guys, so I'll throw it out there. This is another one that I discussed on the pod this week, which was a team bet, and it's front row versus Spire. So you brought up McDowell and Gilliland and how they've been doing well, and I had this written down. We had like a nice discussion on this one, and just kind of like putting this out there. Okay, where do we go with this? Because the numbers for Spire, first of all, it's 3 drivers versus 2 for Spire. And Hocevar on the mile and a half this year is like got a way better average finish, 16 point something or other, whereas everybody else is further down. But we landed on front row because of the fact that Gillen and McDowell looked very good at Kansas for them, right? And they looked decent at Darlington. It just seems like that team with this alliance situation, whatever we want to call it, money getting sorted in different ways. I'm interested in that. So front row, head to head, they're the underdog in that matchup. I figure I'd throw that out there to you, see if you liked either side of that, because you mentioned those two earlier in the race or earlier in the show.
No, yeah, and I'll admit, like Todd Gillen to me is like I love that guy. I just feel like he is outperforming in that equipment so much times this season, and no one's really given him that much credit. And I'm not just talking about the super speedways either. Like he's been leading some laps, and maybe it'll be strategy or whatever, but he's like not falling back or not really getting involved in any crazy crashes where it's like, oh, here's Todd Gillen again. Like he's been just consistently outperforming, whether it's top 10s, top 15s, or even a top 20. A clean day for him. And McDowell as well. McDowell is just, a dog. McDowell is a dog, and he's just racing inside the top 10 when no one expects. When he'll be the top Ford like on any given day that this past season. So definitely agree with that. I don't trust Corey LaJoie and Hocevar as well. I feel like he could put up a good performance, but just the rookie in him first 600 here, right? I'm just not sure that he can stick it out that long, or I just trust McDowell, and I do love that play. So where'd you find that in? What was the value there?
That was on Caesars, and it was a minus 120 for the Spire side, so they were minus 110 for front row. And I have to believe that's because it's a 3 versus 2 matchup.
Okay, yeah, I forgot about Zane Smith.
Yeah, Zane Smith, who finished 10th in this race last year, driving the 38. So
okay.
Yeah. It's kind of a weird one, but the front row guys clearly are performing better recently, and you have that comp track of Kansas where they really looked good. So there's something to kind of hang your hat on there for those two guys.
All right, well, I'll hang my hat there, and on our favorite other type of plays that, or just favorite overall, anything that we've talked about this season, whether it was, or this show rather, whether it was a little Tyler Reddick action, Martin Truex Jr. I'm thinking of, or just your Chevy construction of what you did there with your card there. I like that. Which one stands out to you as your favorite before we close things off here?
Yeah, I definitely love Chevy to win this race. I've been good. I went on a long streak. It was after the Atlanta race to Talladega. I hit manufacturer streaks every race.
Nice.
And now I'm trying to get back into the swing of things, been off and on. So I think Chevy's going to get it done for a 4th time on the mile and a half this year at Charlotte. But I will throw a little love. I didn't mention this specifically, but Tyler Reddick top 5 is one where, I think we both think that he could win this race. I like the top 5. I'm more conservative. I like shooting for the moon, and if you miss, you're in the stars, right? We still hit. So top 5, he's plus money there. Give me one sec. I have Tyler Reddick at plus 140 on Bet Rivers. He's that's the best number you can get him at. Minus 110 on Caesars right now, but plus 140. I love that bet for Tyler Reddick.
Definitely. I would agree with the Reddick there. I think he's going to go out and perform very well at this track like he did last year. I would also throw in a little Martin Truex Jr., not to go against your Chevy card like crazy, but I mean, Yeah, definitely the favorite value on the board at plus 1100 right now on DraftKings. I would even take him for plus 140, like we're mentioning with Reddick for top fives. Truex in the same vein. Like I just feel like those two guys are similar in terms of the speed that they're going to be bringing to this track. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, Phil. Thanks. And also, I will be there. I guess
wow,
I'm going to be there. Yeah. I will be at the track. Yeah. This is actually the first race I ever went to because at the time then 10 years ago, it was on my birthday and now it's on my birthday as well. So
wait,
I'm going to be,
your birthday is May 26th?
Yeah.
My birthday is May 26th. So
it's your birthday?
It's going to be my birthday too. Birthday
Dude,
brother.
Let's
What's
go.
up, man?
That's crazy. Birthday brothers.
Let's
wow.
Go. Yeah,
Let's go. That's
awesome. You're obviously having a little bit of a better one down at the track. But yeah, I'm having myself a day up here in the Philly area. We're watching all three races, getting tuned up. So yeah, that's awesome. Well, congrats on going down to that race.
I've never met anyone with like the same birthday as me. Honestly, that's awesome, dude. Wow. So hell yeah. So okay, so Phil and I are absolutely locked in.
We're locked in.
We're gonna be firing on all cylinders we're the birthday boys and the birthday day, and hopefully NASCAR brings us some winners as well. Phil, where can everyone follow you so they can say happy birthday to you this Sunday on the greatest day in motorsports, dude? Also, I love the fact that we were born on the greatest day of motorsports, or at least that weekend where you got the red, white, and blue, you got the Indy 500, you got the Coke 600. It doesn't get any better than that. So where can everyone support you at?
Yeah, I appreciate it. And it is great because you have an automatic excuse to do whatever you want. It's like, oh, you want to go get tuned up all day? Well, it's your birthday. And we have off on Monday because of Memorial Day. So great. Yeah, Full Tank Phil on Twitter, Instagram. Give me a follow. I love, chatting up. Getting into hearing what other people are on a week-to-week basis, and just absorbing content there as well. And Full Tank with Phil is the name of the podcast I'm on a week-to-week basis that I do, and hopefully we can get you on there, Tino, at some point here in the near future. These races coming up leading into the summertime, but and the NASCAR Betting Preview Show on Wednesday nights. Give us a look. So I really appreciate you having me on. This was really fun, and hopefully everyone wins some money based on what we're talking about.
Awesome. Hell yeah. And also happy birthday.
Happy birthday, dude.
Wow, what an episode of Through the Gears. I did not know that Phil and I share the same birthday, so please be sure to reach out to him, say happy birthday on the Coca-Cola 600 race day there, and be sure to follow him once again at Full Tank Phil. Thank you to him for joining us, really breaking down an interesting strategy that he does with his card. What'd you guys think about that? Comment down below what you thought of Phil's strategy, and can you apply that to your own betting card for this weekend? Because I need to know who you guys are thinking is going to win this one. So comment down below. Let us know who you think is going to win the race, and be sure to stay tuned all throughout the weekend for the Stock Car Scoop that comes out right after post-race of the NASCAR Cup Series racing action from the Coca-Cola 600, one of the crown jewel races. You guys got to be sure to stay tuned to that because that gives you all the insight, knowledge, and analysis that you need to know as we get further and further into the summer stretch of NASCAR racing. I'm so happy with where we're at right now, betting wise. I'm really looking forward to hopefully sweeping the month of May as I'm there in person for the Coca-Cola 600. So if you guys see me, be sure to say hello and be sure to follow me for more NASCAR betting analysis and content all throughout the week at Tino, Pattigno. This has been Tino Patino for Front Stretch, for Through the Gears. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, and all the good things to the Front Stretch Network, to the Tino Patino platforms that I'm on as well. And I'll see you guys next week as we go through the gears.